very, very briefly, rear axle is done, ready to go. Got new stainless steel brake lines on, new brake hose, all the brakes are in. Parking brake cable is correct for the year, not for the axle, because what they're hooking up to in the truck is far more important. Anyway, looks pretty good. This particular line might not be quite shaped like it was, but the other one was kind of beat up and crappy by the time I got off of it, so I didn't have a good one to make a copy of. But it's close enough, and if somebody complains, well then, you know what, they can complain about a lot of other things too. One of the next things we're going to do here is swap out the rear axle, put the 9 1/4 in there, and we're also going to get the springs so they have a little more height to them. Because right now we've got like 29 inches, just as a reference. So, and the back end sits low, in my opinion. It just doesn't seem quite right. Now, if the front sat just as low, then okay, I could see that. But the front is going to sit higher because I've got new springs on the front too. But I've got a different spring pack we're going to put in, or at least parts of it anyway. And then I've also got a single overload spring that kind of goes in the main pack. As you can see, this also has factory or dealership added overloads, although considering how much, well, you'll see in a little bit, you know, how much they actually really wouldn't do anyway. So, okay, let's talk about the gaps here. So we have roughly a 2-finger gap between when the overloads hit their stops. And now here, if the bump stop was here, you know, it'd be down, whoops, roughly to maybe like the bottom of this. So then we're looking at, whoops, probably another 2-finger gap, which means these overloads won't do anything if that bump stop was actually in there. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that, if they put the overloads in wrong, or if they're just for some reason beat down really bad. I don't know. You know, these, the stops on or the perches or whatever you want to call them for the overloads aren't about the same place. You know, there's a couple different styles throughout the 70s and whatnot, but that's about right for the early 70s from what I remember seeing in other stuff. So I'm just confused, and like I said, maybe it was an aftermarket kit or a dealer installed and didn't realize that it actually doesn't do anything. So, and moving the whole spring pack up farther wouldn't make it any better. So I have a feeling those are going to disappear. I'm just going to put enough leaf springs in it, and this heavy duty overload single leaf that I've got that goes in the main pack. So we shall see. Okay, so the old axle is out, obviously. Working on the springs, it took the overloads out just because they were just sitting in there anyway. But you can see this replacement, or not replacement, this partial replacement spring pack, how much arc that has compared to what's in there. And these springs came out of, I think, something out of the 80s, mid 80s, just a half ton. Granted, they have one less leaf in it, but it's got more spring, so I'm going to put most of those in. And then there's this guy. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that. Here we go, kind of. Get out of the sun a little bit. That's just an overload spring designed to go like in the place of this one. We'll see. I'll kind of mock them up a little bit, put the weight back on it, see where it sits, and then kind of go from there. I know what I had for a measurement before, and I'm just going to go for a good solid 2 inches, maybe 3 inches more than I had to begin with. Here's the exhaust that's going underneath there. Pulled it out of a parts truck a couple years ago. Happened to be a Club Cab long box. That was a 4-wheel drive, but this is a 2-wheel. That's fine. And it also happened to have headers on. Now, wouldn't it be super awesome if they just happen to be the same headers and fit the same way? I will be shocked if they are, but anyway, that's what's going under there. Since I have the axle out, now's the time to put that back up in there. And I've got it laying in the shade now because it was in the sun and it was about 50 degrees hotter than I ever wanted to touch with my bare hands. So we're going to let it cool off a little bit before we drag it over there again. So my new spring pack is in there. The main leaf is the original because I didn't feel like taking the bushings apart. And then the next 2 leaves are from those replacement packs, and there's that new piece, and then the underleaf is from the new pack, or the replacement pack, however you want to, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So I didn't put all the weight on the truck to double check. I rolled the axle underneath there, kind of lifted up right in the center until I was taking weight off of everything a little bit. And I had this side done, the other side not. And when I had weight off of the jack stands, or starting to on this side, I went and measured, and this side was roughly 3 to 4 inches farther down than the other side. Granted, there's a little bit of an angle difference which would change things, but I'm guessing it'll be about 3 inches difference by the time it's all said and done when I get it all put back together, once I get my U-bolts and get the exhaust thrown in there and whatever else. And I think that'll be just about perfect. So I will find out tomorrow when I get my parts and get it all put back together. So it's all, well, almost all back together. I can't say all. Parking brake cables aren't right, so I had to order different ones of those. So I'll have to get it up in the air again. But for now, it's back on all four with all the weight on the suspension. And I did raise it about 3 inches, which was my goal. It was 29 inches before, and now we're just a smidge over 32. Once the springs settle a little bit, I'm sure it'll drop just a smidge more, but that's about what I wanted because it sat so low before. And you can kind of see now in there, there's some arc in them springs. There wasn't hardly any arc before. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It's got a bigger gap here, similar to what my other two-wheel drives have got. So I'm happy the way that turned out. Very nice.